Stop me if you've heard this one before. Bad guy crashes party, kidnaps princess, makes dramatic exit. Plucky handsome hero gives chase. Epic quest ensues. But funny story.
Have you ever wanted to play as the bad guy? To be the evil genius that has an army of minions, giant robots, a flying fortress at your beck and call, and singing yaks? Well, look no further than Nefarious, an action platformer that was made by Josh Hano and his team called Starblade that got funded on Kickstarter. Barely got funded, I might add, but it's good to see it reach its goal and give us a unique game. I'm MangaKamen and welcome to Game Chain Reviews. So, what exactly is Nefarious? As previously stated, it's a 2D platformer where you get to live those bad boy fantasies, kidnap the princess, do property damage, and beat up cops. You play as the evil and micromanaging genius, Crow, as he travels across a diverse world. Armed with a giant fist and bombs, you only have one goal: singing your theme song. Catchy. But in actuality, Crow's goal is to kidnap princesses. And you start off committing a deed in action.
Was all that really necessary?
Yes! Yes, the moment you select your file, you're thrown into the thick of things, escaping from the hero and fighting against police. There are 3 main controls you need to be aware of: aiming, attacking, and jumping. Luckily, you have the chance before you start the game to get a hold of the controls. You can use a keyboard, a mouse, or a game controller. And fortunately, you can also do this at any time in the first menu if you choose to. The opening level certainly has its charm as it gives you a lot of chance to understand and get used to the controls. Not to mention, it acts as a real good stage for the player to get used to some of the more complicated mechanics of the game. For example, while there isn't an actual double jump in the game, you can use the bomb jump. It's where you can use your bomb, and if you press the jump button while you're either standing on a bomb or if it flies behind you, it will propel you higher. It takes a little getting used to, but it's well worth it. And you'll notice by my screen, you'll see that throughout the stages, you'll have these purple icons flying around the air that have their bombs on them. These allow you to push the jump button to continue your ascension, and to be frank, I found that to be really fun. Well, that and blowing everything up. Although I hate to be accused of showing the wrong things, I will say that most of the time you have a limited amount of ammunition that you can use. They do come back over time, and enemies that you defeat will drop these little canisters that will refill your bombs faster, but you gotta learn to be able to manage your bombs as they are your best use of fighting enemies from long range or those that are in the air. You also take in consideration the angle as well, so it takes a little bit of getting used to. You do have access to upgrades though, such as getting more ammo and changing the attack. But word to the wise, if you do so, most of the time you won't be able to do bomb jumping with these upgrades. There's another aspect of the gameplay that's done by the royalty. After all, the princesses themselves aren't helpless. While you're kidnapping other princesses, Crow will gain different abilities. If you've got Apodea, the bee princess for example, you'll be able to jump higher.
What is the meaning of this? You're not my usual kidnapper. Where's Scorpior?
He cold and sick. Bad cold.
I highly doubt that. Scorpior is a robot.
Really? Because I was totally picturing a giant scorpion.
Yeah, he gets that a lot.
And if you get another princess later in the game, you'll be given unlimited power to use your bombs. And that's a nice touch and changes up the gameplay in subtle manners. I kind of feel like I'm missing something. Oh, right, the plot. So Crow's attempting to take over the world.
Of course!
And to do so, he needs to kidnap princesses. But there's always a hero willing to...
Finally! My knight in shining armor! My hero! My love!
Mayapple, I'm breaking up with you.
What? Now? You're doing this right now?
Hello, supervillain right here.
We barely see each other anymore. You spend more time with Crow than with me.
Because he kidnapped me.
And now you're defending him.
Well, this is awkward.
That's the thing with the plot of the game. It certainly likes to play around with what you expect. Heck, pretty much every 2D platformer consists of you playing as the good guy, so playing as the villain is already playing with your expectations. This game pretty much plays the villain protagonist trope, and even messes with the rescue the princess trope itself. I don't want to give too much away with the story since there are some pretty legitimate comedic moments that you guys should discover on your own.
Say, princess, what's a thorax?
Excuse me?
On a bug, is the thorax the butt?
Can we keep this kidnapping on a professional level, please?
Back to the actual game, you'll travel the world in your flying fortress, the Sovereign, going across quite a few different kingdoms, each having their own flavor to them, even if they are slightly generic. You got the city, you got the Bug Kingdom, the Frozen Tundra with singing Yaks, the Japanese-themed Lava World, and the Evil Lab. But they certainly do have their own bits of uniqueness as well. And of course they stand out from each other, from enemy designs, to the music, to the overall feel of the levels. The only real exception is the opening city level in the lab, where most of the enemies and some of the designs from the initial level are reused here. Other than that, the levels have their own distinction. You can really tell the level of effort that was put into making the sprites and graphics. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about one level that was extremely breathtaking to me in terms of design. But if you don't want to be spoiled for it, let me give you a timestamp to go past this portion of the video. Ready? Alright. There's an underwater level down the line in the game where pretty much everything is a solid color. In the vast contrast of color, it is really eye-catching and actually made me stare at the visuals for a little bit. Throw in the music and I was thrown for a loop, especially in this game. I was not expecting that at all. And it's not a bad thing. Back to the sprites, you've got cops, robots, bee swordsmen, Japanese mythological creatures, Russians who shoot birds from guns. Wait, what? Ah! Damn you birds! In all seriousness, to have all these graphics made, especially giving the characters a lot of fluidity and attention to detail, is a good sign of the creators really putting a lot of effort into the game. And I want to remind you guys that this thing on Kickstarter barely made its goal. It's almost disappointing. I actually wanted to see what more goals they had to go through. The game certainly has a lot of unique boss battles, mainly because you're the actual boss. At the end of each stage, you'll be going up against a hero, with Crow jumping into a giant machine to fight against said heroes. And we've got a few shoutouts. For example, a giant floating pod with a wrecking ball against the Sonic-based bee character. He even makes a chili dog reference! It was actually pretty fun to take on the role of the boss, and pretty much playing around with several different kinds of fighting. There's even one point where you pull a Final Fantasy and go all retro with it. Now, while this is fun, it's also a bit jarring. If it's your first time playing the game, you won't have a lot of time to get used to the controls of the boss fights. It's a minor issue, but still one that I felt that new players should be aware of when going into the game. And then there's some enemy placement. When you get to the land of Sukochi, you'll be forced to go through a gauntlet, with some rather difficult enemy placement and platforming that did cost me a few lives. There were also a few times where I found myself slipping on platforms, or how the bomb jump icons didn't work even though I know I pushed the jump button in front of them. Of course, it was a little aggravating, especially since if you die, you lose a chunk of your cash, which you need in order to upgrade your health, your ammo, and get new other items. But luckily, it floats in a small container where you died. But be warned, if you die again before you collect the cash, you'll lose that money from beforehand. There's one more thing I should warn you guys about. When you're talking to characters and you get a new area added to your map, be careful. You try to speed through the map part by pushing the accept button, you'll be entered into a conversation with the character you were just talking to beforehand, and you won't be able to get out of that conversation until it ends. If people thought the owl from Ocarina of Time was bad, at least you knew you were talking to the guy at the time! It's nothing game-breaking, but it's still something I have to talk about with these things. Nefarious is a tough game, but it's a fun one. You can get it on Steam right now for about $14.99, and you can get at least a few hours of enjoyment. I think it's a little pricey for the length, but there is replayability in the game, and it's always fun to return to. I suggest getting it when it's on sale on Steam, but it's definitely something you guys should play if you're into funny games or platforming side-scrollers. I'm TrashCommon, and if you got to this point in the video, type in the comments, "Singing Yaks!" Until then, remember to examine your fandom.